Hey everybody, this is James, and today we'll be having a look at the Ruger Wrangler. It is a 6-shot, single-action, 22 caliber revolver, and it's relatively new from Ruger. Ruger has been producing the single 6 and Bearcat models for some time, and this is their newest offering in about 60 years. It's an interesting price point handgun, meant to compete with other budget plinkers. In fact, I have one of them here with me today, the Heritage Rough Rider, which we're going to be putting up against the new Wrangler. It's an interesting little handgun. It's Cerakoted, and it has an all-aluminum frame versus the old single 6, which has a steel frame and aluminum grip frame. So we're kind of splitting hairs here. You see we have our loading gate. You just open the loading gate to free the cylinder for loading. The gun, like I said, is single action, requiring the hammer to be cocked for every shot. And to round out the presentation, we have some relatively nice checkered plastic grips. We have fixed sights, as you can see here, with a square notch and a fixed blade. And there's our ejector rod at work. And not to mention the good old Ruger transfer bar safety, so you can carry all 6 rounds fully loaded, making accidental discharge impossible. Shooting the Wrangler has been a pretty lukewarm experience for me. I was very optimistic when this little pistol came out, given I'm such a fan of Ruger single-action handguns. But as time went on and I got the gun down range, I noticed that there's some things it does well, but some things it doesn't do well. Here I am just plinking at some cans at about 10 yards distance, and the gun connects just fine. At 10 yards, even on paper, the groups are pretty good. I'm getting just over an inch with most types of ammunitions, but the rounds are striking an inch or two low depending on the load. So I decided to make the test a little more fair. I benched the Heritage and the Wrangler at 15 yards, the regulation distance that Ruger states and the Wrangler manual, that's where the factory sighting is, the regulation for the fixed sights. Now with these fixed sights, there's only so much you can do in order to dial in the load. You can file down the front sight or deepen the rear groove, depending on whether you're shooting high or shooting low. Here we are shooting the Heritage with one of our types of ammunition. I used over 6 different types of ammunition through both guns. Overall, I put about 800 rounds through the Wrangler, and neck and neck, the accuracy between these two guns is very similar, with some ammunitions performing better out of one versus the other. It just depends. However, I noticed with the Wrangler, taking myself out of the equation now, the Wrangler's sights are a lot cleaner. They're a lot easier to pick up. As is the balance of the gun feels right and it feels solid. But the one Achilles heel I could say is that trigger pull. The trigger pull is a good bit heavier, and it has a bit of grit to it, at least at first. And you can see that that trigger pull is allowing me to, well, not really allowing me. You can see in this target on the right side, which is the Wrangler target, that I'm actually putting my rounds to the right. I'm actually jerking them off to the right here. And that's not the best thing in the world. I ended up putting more rounds to the gun towards the end of testing, and my groups ended up very well centered. However, the accuracy between the two guns is almost identical. And still, you can see the point of impact is not where I'm aiming still. At 15 yards, the rounds are dropping a few inches low, but you go up to 25 yards, even with identical groups at 15 yards, the drop is 3 to 4 inches. That could be the difference between a hit or a miss and possibly getting dinner. So what's the bottom line? Would I recommend the Ruger Wrangler? Actually, yes, I would, despite what I've actually said negatively about it. The Ruger fans, there are two different types of camps. One's optimistic like I was, and the other thinks that Ruger is cutting a lot of corners, and that this pistol is just going to be a cheap pistol that isn't going to live up to the single six. Well, spoiler alert, it doesn't exactly live up to the single six reputation, but at under $200, what do you expect? But overall, though, the Wrangler is adequately accurate, and if you have the liberty to play with the sights and also the ammunition, this gun will be a little tack driver. I have no doubt about it. Of course, the trigger is one thing, and I do wish that the sights did come regulated, or at least close to something from the factory. But the Ruger Wrangler doesn't feel like it's had any real shortcuts to it. It's a very solid gun, even though it has an aluminum frame. That does shave off a few ounces. On my scale, it's 1 pound 13 ounces. This gun has been excellent for me. It's been 100% reliable. The sights are very clean, and I really like the plow handle grip of the checkered plastic grips. And as for the Cerakote, you could definitely nail on the Cerakote as being cheaper than blued steel. But Cerakote is actually a very trendy finish today, and it's one that you can customize. I think Ruger really went with that just because they can come up with more finishes in the future, or it's something that you can customize yourself to fit your tastes. Overall, although I initially was cursing this gun, I have to say, after a bit of shooting, I definitely recommend it. It's a lot more refined, a lot better built, and a lot safer than the Heritage Rough Rider. With that said, I don't think you can do bad with either one. But again, leave your thoughts in the comment section, including any hate comments. I'll see you guys next time.